Good morning. It's Bob again. We're talking about growing into Christ-likeness by loving like Jesus. And that's kind of Paul's theme in Philippians chapter 2, is this idea that we are living worthy of Christ by our the way that we tend and care for each other, and that Jesus is the example. He is the template. He is the one that we look to and see that. So as we're talking about this, Paul uses these phrases: value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but to the interests of others. And it was interesting, as as I preach and talk about these things week by week, I'm challenged to put these into practice in my own life. And Monday is normally our day off, and so I actually took the time and prayed and asked the Lord, and I thought about Becky's needs, and I thought about what kinds of interests and needs that she might have on that day. But it occurred to me that I just needed to ask, that I needed to ask, how can I help? In putting her needs and her interests above my own actually meant that I actually needed to start asking good questions, like, hey, how would you like for this day to play out? In your mind, what were you thinking? What would you like to see happen today? Again, our day off, how are we going to spend this? If I'm going to put her interest over mine, I'm going to actually have to ask her. And so there was a show that we watched for a little bit of time called New Amsterdam. It got a little bit off the rails fairly quickly, but one of the things that I liked about the first part of it was that the guy that was running the show at this particular hospital basically was saying, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? And he kept asking that question and calling the medical staff to ask that question, how can I help? Instead of making people sort of serve the medical establishment, he said, the medical establishment exists to serve people. So how can I help? How can I help? And I think that's a beautiful question for us to start asking people around us. If we're going to elevate and value others above ourselves, if we're going to actually look after needs of others, we're going to need to learn how to ask that question. How can I help? I'd like to hear you saying this off of your lips, if you would. How can I help? How can I help? Four easy words. How can I help? What's going on with you? What would you like to see happen today? All those different kind of things are part of that beginning, where wives, you can ask that of your husbands. Husbands, ask that of your wives. Parents, ask that of your kids. Kids of your parents. Adult children after their adult parents, and friends and students at school, et cetera, et cetera. I just lost my little remote control thing. So I want to ask you to ask that question today. How can I help? Thanks for joining me.